Good morning, how's it going? So the concept art you're seeing on your screen right now was made by Mumbo Jumbo for season 10 of Hermitcraft. He's only just recently started doing this, where he's made a concept drawing for the build he's going to make in the game, and I thought it was a really cool idea, and I thought it was really interesting to see how the build came together from the initial concept art and then into the game. So what I'm going to do is take elements from both and see what it looks like in diorama form. So that's what we're doing today. I'm starting out with just your basic cardboard, mainly because I've got an absolute shed load of it, but I also do enjoy working with it as a material. So the technique that you're going to see in a minute that I used to make the bricks on top of the cardboard, I have done it before in a previous video. But in that video, the cardboard that I used was too thin, so when I put the clay on top, it made the cardboard warp, and I had to stack books on top of it to try and flatten it out again, which did work perfectly fine. But I wanted to avoid that this time, so I used a thicker cardboard. This cardboard isn't particularly special, it's just thicker, so it's more sturdy, so I didn't have that issue. So, like I said, I'm using air dry clay to make the bricks on top of the cardboard. Using this clay just means that you don't have to put it in the oven to cure it, you just leave it 24 hours and then it will cure by itself. So to do this, I'm just using my clay sculpting tools that I would use with any other clay. I'm also using a wee bit of water on the clay just to help it stay together. I found that this clay tears a lot easier than the polymer clay does, so using the water just avoids that. I also really like this method for making the bricks. I've done the cutting up hundreds of tiny foam rectangles and sticking them back together thing before, and however much I do think that looks good, it also takes up a significant amount of time compared to the carving, and though the carving is not exactly the best, I think it's good enough for what I'm trying to do and doesn't drive you absolutely insane. Foam's also quite difficult to get where I'm living, so this is just the best alternative I've got. This paint is just acrylic craft paint. You can get it basically everywhere. I have found that the washes, trying to do a wash with acrylic paint is quite difficult. I don't know if I'm just doing something wrong. It tends to just peel the paint that's underneath it back again. So it might be that I'm being impatient and not waiting on the paint below to dry before going in again with a wash. But I think it works well enough for what I'm trying to do here. This is going to be trim for the windows. I wanted to cover up the cardboard edge to try and make it look less like cardboard. I then also made a windowsill like in the concept art. It's using the same technique, it's just a bit of cardboard with some thinner cardboard. I think it was like a cereal box or something, to cover up that cardboard edge again. The red that I put down originally was just too bright, too vibrant, and I was trying to tone it down a bit with the wash first of all. I think the better option was if I'd desaturated it first with a black or a brown or something, and then gone in to paint the individual bricks to give some variation. Once I'd put in the variation, doing the wash after that works quite well because it draws it all together and makes it look more cohesive. So for the trim here, I initially painted it white, but I did go back later on and paint it a beige colour, more like the concept art. Once I've done that to all the walls and also the stairs that I made, which was exactly the same process, just cardboard and clay, I move on to the interior on the bottom floor. Now, I've got very little experience making interiors, so this one will be quite simple. I'm starting the windows with some see-through packaging. I can't remember exactly what it was in the cupboard, with more of that thin cereal box cardboard to make the trim of the window. This will then be painted with the same craft paint as before in brown, and then I move on to the flooring. At this point I wasn't really sure if you would even be able to see this through the window, but I like the idea and I think doing it this way is quite simple, but it's also quite effective. The door into this room is fake, there's no actual door. I just put a trim on the cardboard wall and like a little door handle with that same thin cardboard. These shelves were made in exactly the same way as the windowsills, just a bit of cardboard with the trim around the edges so you can't see the cardboard pattern on the inside. Unfortunately, I did make this before Green's video came out with that he'd put the snails inside Big Ron's, which I think probably would have made a better diorama. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments. I might come back to that if people want to see it. Although I did originally have it all measured out, I still managed to get the walls all squint, so this isn't a perfect rectangle. That wasn't particularly surprising. I seem to manage to do that every time I make something. This is the front door. It was made in exactly the same way as the flooring for the room. It had the same base coat of that brown, and then I went in with a more saturated brown over the cracks in the wood. I'm now covering the cardboard texture on the trim of the roof. I do a lot of this covering the edges of the cardboard, but I think it makes for a really effective thing and it's really easy to do. As soon as that cardboard edge goes away, it just looks so clean. The stairs are given the same treatment as the door and all the other bits of wood. It's really nice to see it once the colour goes on, and I think it just brings it all together. At this point I'd actually finished the clay I was using, so I'd opened a different packet, that's why it's a different colour. I'm just filling in the gaps at the corners with more clay just to smooth it round and make it look like one cohesive building instead of 4 walls. So this floor starts in exactly the same way, just 4 bits of cardboard. This little box is going to go behind the window, so instead of making another interior, I'm just going to paint this box black and put a curtain in front of it, so it looks like there's an interior there even though there isn't. So Mumbo makes the first floor out of stone in Minecraft, and in the concept art it's sort of a teal colour. I preferred the stone of the build, so that's what I went for with this. I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to paint this or how I was going to scatter in the brick texture. Eventually I ended up with making these trim pieces so it looks like there's brick built in around the edges as like a stronger support. And then I painted in different various colours of grey and brown and some green as well to make it more of a cobblestone texture. I decided against using clay on the top floor, mainly because I made the mistake of not measuring it properly, and once I'd built the square then I realised I couldn't put a layer of clay on top of the cardboard because it wouldn't fit in the gap, but I didn't think the clay would help any on the first floor. This floor then gets the same trim as the ground floor, covering up all the edges again with that thin cardboard. I think at this point you can tell that I've not measured it properly because this isn't a perfect square either, but it does fit the building. So I measured it to fit the building, but clearly the building is not measured correctly. So this roof does look wonky, but it doesn't look wonky once it's on. It again gets the same coat of beige as the trim pieces, and then later I do go in and make it look a bit more grimy and weathered. I, again, wasn't particularly sure what I wanted to do with this, but eventually I realised I didn't have the time and or the materials to make a big cliff. I think originally it was a nice idea, but it just wouldn't have worked with the scale I was using. This is a mix of plaster, some Mod Podge, which is just white glue, some sand, some like fake gravel stuff for some texture, and a little bit of paint so I could see where it was going. So I went in with a base of brown. At this point it was starting to look a bit too brown, but I knew that I was going to come in with grass and different kinds of foliage and stuff, so I wasn't too worried about it. I made the path a slightly lighter colour just so I could highlight all the texture that I had in, and then I also came in with greys and some greens to pick out the stones and put some weathering up the building and round the edges of it. This would be the point I would use a static grass applicator if I had one, but I don't have one, so I'm just sticking it on by hand to try to sprinkle it down to hopefully get some of it to stand up. This table is going to go outside of the building. I know it's under the boxes section, but it's going to go alongside all the boxes I'm going to make in a minute. This is made in the same way as the shelves and the windowsills. So it's just a bit of cardboard with some trim around it. And then the legs are made out of toothpick, just stuck together with, again, that thin cardboard. I was really proud of this wee microwave. The front is just cut out a layer of the thick cardboard, and then I put a bit of that same see-through plastic that I use for the windows in the front, and I think it's really effective. So another thing that wasn't in the picture, but I think it would fit well with the environment. It's like an electric pole or like a pylon or something, and I'm going to string together the pole that's actually on the building in the concept art with some wire, which is probably going to be string, just to make it look like the electric is being channeled into the building to power the lights and the big sign. I also made a washing machine, but it ended up just being too big and bulky for the build. Now that Mumbo's doing all this promo for his new merch and that, and in the video there was a washing machine and it just fit so well into the room, and I wanted to make one, so I did make one, but it just didn't fit, which is a shame. This material I just had lying about, and I thought it was retro enough looking to use in this kind of build. I went back and forth about how I wanted to position the curtain, but when I actually went round to making it, this was the simplest option. It's just stuck on some aluminium wire, it's armature wire, and then tied around with a little elastic band. These are going to be little mushrooms to dot around the bottom of the base. These are polymer clay, so I had to bake them, and then I'm going to stick little bits of toothpick to make the stems. Moving on to the signs, these again are made in the same way, just a solid bit of cardboard, then the trim added on, and then I'll paint them. found this font on Pinterest, and if you just type in fonts on Pinterest, you'll get a whole list of them and you can just pick out which ones you think fit. I really like this one, so I took the time to do the lettering, and then also once that was done, I made them look a bit more grimy. So without further ado, let's have a look at the results. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate everyone who made it this far, and if you did like it, leave a like, leave a comment suggesting anything you'd like to see, and subscribe if you enjoyed. I also want to take a minute to ask you to all bear with me while I get used to talking to myself. It's been quite a strange experience to try and get used to, and I think I'm getting there. It's also quite a weird thing having to edit your voice over the footage as well. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you have a good day. Goodbye.